Welcome back to our final video in the 100 level series of performing at your best. Hopefully, you've seen all the previous 13 videos that outline in a comprehensive and systematic manner what I consider to be the major principles, perspectives of human performance, whether it is an artistic performance, performing arts, or an athletic performance. These same principles apply. Again, I believe that if you have strong understandings of the perspectives and the principles, that will give you and enable you to give strong practices and stronger performances. Too often people don't understand how they perform or what is necessary to perform, and that's when they go into deep, unexplained slumps. These previous 13 videos and what we'll talk about today help provide the foundation from which you can be more effective and efficient in all your practices and rehearsals and all of your optimal and hopefully maximal performances. Hopefully what I presented to you in this sequence made some sense for you. My students say that these principles are worth reviewing. So every once in a while, when you need to, or in the midst of a slump, or coming up to an important series of performances, go back to the basics and review some of these videos. Remember, depending on your operating system, I started this series with the 101 video and went all the way down to this one, number 14. Sometimes your operating systems have the newest one first. If that's the case, just switch that little column so the arrow of the date is pointing up and you'll have the regular sequence of videos. Oh my goodness. We've covered so much, and my compliments to you for wading through a lot of these principles, perspectives, and stories. Let me tell you one more story as an introduction to what I'm going to be talking to you today. This is the oldest story I tell, goes all the way back to vaudeville days. Go Google what vaudeville was. In the early parts of the 20th century, before there was the internet, before there was even TV or even widespread radio, people were entertained by different traveling troupes of musicians, singers, actors, and jugglers, comedians that would go from town to town. That was called vaudeville. My oldest story that prepares you for what we're covering today goes like this. It's a classic story. A chicken and a pig were walking down the road together one day, and they passed a diner, a restaurant, with a banner on it that said ham and egg special, 99 cents. Now the chicken looks at this banner as if it could read and says, do they know what kind of sacrifice I make for my eggs for them to sell them for only 99 cents? The pig looks over at the chicken and says, yes, for you, it's sacrifice. For me, it's total commitment. You'll get that later on tonight and laugh like heck. You should never say or think the word commitment without the word total in front of it. There is no such thing as being kind of committed or semi-committed or pretty much committed. No, it's like a classic on-off switch. Either your commitment is total or it is off. There is no place in the middle for that. The longer I live, the more aware I become that commitment is essential and even sacred. The ability to promise something, give something a high priority in your life and commit yourself to that. You see, there are two different phases of commitment. It is one thing to make a promise or give a commitment to it. It's quite another thing to live with it. Those are two separate processes. What happens to a lot of people, they say, yes, I'll commit myself to excellence, and then they don't do anything. One of my dear friends who worked at the University of Nevada, becoming a high-level administrator there, we affectionately called No Problem Johnson. That's not his real name. Whenever we would ask Dave to do something, his response was, no problem. And that's the last we heard from Dave on that. Might have not have been a problem for him because he decided he wasn't going to do it anyway. But it took Dave years to figure out that the making a promise or commitment is one thing, living with it, implementing it, fitting in with your other commitments is quite another thing. That's where we're covering today about commitment, and also we're going along the same continuum to another extreme about living a balanced lifestyle, taking care of yourself, taking care of your mental health. The famous Japanese and then a Major League Baseball player, Ichiro Suzuki, his father created 4 guiding principles that helped Ichiro early on in his careers to develop the excellence he became. The 4 guiding principles were these: harmony, patience, effort, and a fighting spirit. First and foremost, Ichiro's father says there has to be a harmony in your life, a balance in your life, that everything is well connected and flows together. He also said that we have to be patient. As much as you want to be intense and practice hard, things unfold in their own way. And sometimes you have to wait patiently for your opportunity, or as some athletes say, waiting for the game to come to you. Whole different concept. Effort has to be pure, not hard or maximal all the time. It has to be smart, and it has to be pure. And then the fighting spirit is your gut, what's in your soul. What are you doing to give it your best? So at the end of the day, you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I did my best. Commitment is something, if you treat as something precious, you can be honest with yourself and your efforts. You can accept your failures and disappointments if you honestly knew you gave it its best shot. Commitment also then extends to you staying the course. And my concept for that is self-discipline. I came out with a handout about self-discipline, and I almost put it in a poetic form. Let me read to you some of these. It's in 2 dimensions: self-discipline in your performing and the self-discipline in your entire life. In performing, self-discipline provides the structure for all practices and performances. Self-discipline promotes consistency and control. Self-discipline breeds full and proper mental toughness. Self-discipline actually frees up performances. Self-discipline channels emotions and passions in positive, productive ways. Self-discipline insulates against pressure and self-doubt. Self-discipline is remaining serenely patient and doggedly positive, especially in the midst of adversity. Self-discipline is you staying calm, clear, and connected within the wild storm of some performances. Self-discipline honors your way, your personal way, while not falling prey to greed nor even frustration. Self-discipline is doing the opposite often of what is tempted. Self-discipline is continually believing in yourself. Now, how we apply our own self-discipline is actually a liberating thing. It's not a stoic, rigid form. It's you taking care of yourself, living your commitments. That is self-discipline in your performances, but it's also based on what I call self-discipline in life. Here are some things. Self-discipline is doing the right things for the right reasons in the right ways at the right time, even and especially if no one's around to observe you. Self-discipline is daily living all your priorities. It provides the creative tension, if you will, to stay organized. Self-discipline is consistently attending to the little things. Everything you do matters, and how you do everything matters in the long run. Performances are based on not only broad perspectives, but they're also the little things you do every day. Those are the building blocks. Self-discipline is addressing your weak aspects first and the tough aspects all the time. Self-discipline is being inwardly confident without necessarily outwardly cocky and full of yourself. Self-discipline is keeping your mouth shut and your mind open. Self-discipline is following your own personal path when others, especially, are going in other directions. Honoring your path. Self-discipline creates the strength to be gentle and to be kind. Only the strong can be gentle, kind, empathic, compassionate, and giving. Self-discipline empowers continuous improvement. It keeps us going. And self-discipline is the want, but it is also a need. You will discover that the more you honor your commitments, live your commitments, that the easier they become, and it almost becomes a need to stay disciplined. And it is almost an embarrassment when you don't stay disciplined. Following your own path, living your commitments is actually a joy instead of a sacrifice. Very, very, very rarely do I hear a performing artist or an athlete say during the midst of their performance lives that has been a great sacrifice. Living your commitments is your priorities. It's your way of life. I've heard people reflect after their performance careers are over that, oh, golly, all the sacrifices I made. The great ones never say that during their performance lives. They're too busy living their commitments. So commitment is that precious thing that you can own up to and be proud of, that you did commit yourself to giving your best every day. Commitment is the core of your honesty with yourself and what you're doing every day. Can you look at yourself in the mirror and say at the end of the day, am I doing everything right? Am I living my commitments? Am I in line with my commitments? Am I being true to myself, my hopes, my dreams, my wishes, into my commitments? Do I blend my passion with my concentration? They are step brothers and sisters to each other. And do I learn how to stay in the moment? As you start becoming more honest with yourself from the microscope of intensity of commitment, along the whole continuum, there's something else, that your performance lives become such an integral part of your entire life. And if you don't take care of your entire life, your performance lives will suffer. How many of you know people in your area that when you were younger had more skills and abilities, talents than you, made it look absurdly easy, and fell by the wayside because they were not being true to themselves nor learning how to apply themselves? Thinker or feeler as a personality type, both apply. Whereas you, by the very fact that you're viewing this, are honoring yourself. And part of honoring this yourself is this notion of taking care of yourself. A great singer-songwriter who died way too early in his life was a guy by the name of Harry Chapin. And in one of his songs, he had the lyrics, "If you're no good to yourself, you'll be no good to anybody else." To that I extend, if you're no good to yourself and don't take care of yourself, you're never going to be good at your performance areas. Just in the last 5-6 years, has many world-class athletes emerged talking about mental health. Is that so often they might not have had the parents, the coaches, the teammates, the resources to say, yes, I'm an outstanding performer or athlete, but there's a gap in me. And at what expense did I do those things to fulfill my dreams? And their mental health became more important. We've seen instances of the great tennis player Naomi Osaka taking off some time to work on their mental health. Of course, Michael Phelps has been the first one to openly admit he had mental health issues that he had to seek help for. Simone Biles at the recent Olympics sat out because she lost all touch with herself, and under the pressure cooker of the Olympic Games, that she could not perform. As I'm recording this at the end of February 2022, the Winter Olympic Games are just finishing. And we have some heartbreaking stories that you may want to remember, no matter when you're watching this. The United States skier Michaela Schifrin, who was world-class, the favorite, uncharacteristically made silly mistakes in some of her races. And she took it so hard. And once she was giving an interview after one of these disappointments, and she says, "I'm questioning everything I did and how I did it." Oh my goodness. The poor person, that if she had to wait to the pressure of the Olympic Games to question those things, that's the wrong time to question it. They're still valid questions. Even more devastating was this 15-year-old Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva, who tested positive for a heart medication, was somehow allowed to perform and gave a miserable performance. And just the sight of her weeping, falling apart without anybody there to help her was probably the end of her career. At 15 years old is the end of your career. How sad is that? What kind of life is she going to live post the Olympics and for the rest of her lives? Early on in my career, that ended up with being a mental coach and performance psychologist. When I started helping athletes and performing artists, they were coming to me, and I was not prepared for this, with personal problems. They knew I had a doctorate in counseling psychology, so I had the clinical skills to help folks. And they would come to me with some nice presenting problems. I am anxious about something. I don't know how to cope with pressure, but very quickly they wanted to talk about was their own satisfaction, their own happiness, their own confidence, their own belief in themselves. Sometimes if they didn't address those issues, they would have, at the very least, performance anxieties or some generalized anxieties, which sometimes morphed into situational depressions or chronic depressions, also led into some counterproductive behaviors, such as eating disorders, namely bulimorexia, the ingesting, binging, and then purging, all the way to some panic attacks, all the way through to some thoughts of suicide. So what I wanted to do early on in my career is work on human performance, the output. But it dawned on me that people needed to find an outlet to start exploring themselves as a person. Yes, find gifted performing artists and athletes. They have to take care of themselves. If you are in that boat, I suggest you find a good counselor who professionally will keep things confidential. They may not necessarily have the awareness of skills of your performance area. That is not a necessity. It may be even sometimes an advantage where you can explain them. Hopefully you can find a good licensed professional counselor in your area that you can meet face-to-face with. The things you accomplish is almost secondary to the process of sitting down with somebody who has the skills and who has the interest and empathy to work with you. If you cannot find somebody there are an increasing amount of online counseling services, which, in the absence of meeting with somebody face-to-face, are things will be helpful for you. If you don't take care of yourself, you'll be no good to anybody else, especially your performance self. Today, we call that home-life balance. Today, we call that work-life balance. It is this balancing act that's really more of a juggling act, where balancing just implies two things. Juggling 3, 4, 5, 6 balls in your life, each ball represents one area of your life, is the ultimate of gaining an overall rhythm and perspective in your lives. If you juggle, or if you watch anybody other juggle, watch that the ball that's in their hand at one time, there's only one ball, is the only one they can control. And that's the one they have to give priority to. A relative appropriate amount of priority to, then throwing it back in the air so they catch another one. And that's the one they can. That any adjustments you make to the how long you have that ball in your hand has ripple effects of the overall rhythm. In essence, if you spend too much time on your performance life, all the other balls in your life, the major roles in your life will come crashing down. Optimally, when you, like a juggler, it's the overall rhythm you establish with the 4, 5, 6 balls in your life, so that you attend to each appropriately and fully as it needs to, but it's the overall rhythm in your life that's important. Taking care of yourself is good and essential in its own way. That also means you and only you are in charge of you. Too often we get swayed by good and well-intentioned parents or well-intentioned coaches or other teammates or colleagues. They can't control your life. Only you can. Those people in your lives, whether it's physiotherapists or sports psychologists or coaches of all kinds, are part of your team, but you're the head of your team. So you have to assert control of your life, because at the end of the day, and you look in the mirror, you're not seeing your coaches or your friends or family, you're looking at yourself. Part of this is knowing that you're on a long journey into mastery, into excellence, into competition, and into your own self-satisfaction. Oh my goodness, what we've covered during these 14 videos now are major principles and perspectives. Remind yourself of those. In the 200 level videos that I will be recording are more specific applications based on these, where I said in the first couple sessions, it is nice to follow the sequence of all of these 100 level videos. The 200 level videos that I'll be recording are ones that you could go right to if you need some specifics. Right now, here's what I'm planning. We're going to talk about in these 200 level videos, the proper uses of staying doggedly positive, mental toughness, what it is and what it is not. A term I made up called how to get past mental sticking points in performances. We're going to talk about some specifics of pre-performance routines as well as post-performance routines. We're going to talk about how to work your way through slumps and slide through streaks. We're going to talk about pressure, how to cope with pressure. We're going to talk about some team or ensemble dynamics. We're going to talk about specific skills to improve concentration. We're going to talk about how to handle anger, how to transfer your performance from the rehearsal area or the practice field to the actual playing field or the actual performance. Whole different there. We're going to talk about how to deal with injuries, psychologically, how to recover from injuries. We're going to talk about your own character development and also your career development of integrating that. There'll be 20 or 30 of these that I'll be recording. So feel free, once you have the foundations from this 100 level series, to go to any one you choose in the 200 level series that you want to learn more about or what you need to learn more about. As I mentioned, your life is a journey. Your performance life is a journey as well. And I constantly marvel at people who maximize more themselves. That's why I said in the first video, now that I'm retired, that I have become not so much the expert anymore or the provider anymore or the coach anymore. I become, again, a student and a fan of high-level performances. I'm constantly amazed with performance. I came up with almost a little poem called The Farther Reaches of the Performer. The first leap of a performer is that transcendence from being a taker to being a giver. Early on, you're taking things from people. People are wanting you to excel in things, so you get used to taking. Later on, as you mature as a person and as a performer, you start becoming a giver who gives something back, who is a true teammate, is a supporter, can be a coach, can be a researcher, like maybe has become, again, a student of the game, a true fan, the warrior athlete who is so much entrenched with that samurai tradition of it being in your lifestyle. This farther reaches also becomes you are the consummate performer as well as a complete person. Your journey should be filled with awe and wonder and excitement and a pride of what you've achieved, what you're able to tap into, and the person you have become. Farewell and enjoy your journeys. We'll see you in the 200 level videos.